Hi everybody, how are you all doing? This is Veena Ramagopalan. You can call me Veena in short. A short introduction about myself. I have around 25 years of industry versatile experience, which is a combination of corporate and defense. Started my career very differently, unlike many women in this country, probably. I am an ex-naval officer from the first batch of women officers in the Indian Navy. Thereafter, worked in various companies, including Philips, where I had a long tenure of around 13 years, holding senior strategic and leadership roles. I've had an enriching corporate career, and when I look back, my experience pretty much spans across strategic and process consultancy, business excellence, quality assurance, quality management, large program management and delivery. I'm currently co-founder and director of Inroads Leadership Development, pursuing my passion, connecting the dots in terms of what I have acquired over the years. For last 4 years, I'm working as coach, mentor, and consultant. I'm very passionate about coaching and mentoring leaders and professionals like you, connecting with people, sharing my experience, and of course challenging and supporting them, especially in terms of their limiting beliefs. I also enjoy and work a lot with and engage many women professionals, and of course inspire women leaders, helping them to really accelerate their leadership abilities, and help them to integrate seamlessly in their organization. So it's been really pleasure being here and sharing some of my experience in this topic, which is how to be most effective voice in the room. So this topic is actually very close to my heart. The reason being, when I look back in terms of my career journey itself, I have noticed, especially more so in terms of women, it's not just about being present in the room, and that obviously we all understand that it's the opportunities itself are very few, and also having just a seat at the table. It's also important as to how do you convert these meeting as an opportunity, every meeting as an opportunity, and make it meaningful for yourself and create really an impact and influence over others. And how do you really create an effective presence and a voice in the room? So I mean, of course, I'll share with you some of my own little tricks which I have used in terms of creating a presence in the meeting room. And I hope we have a great chat together. So moving on to the first question, um, which is from Madhu Upadhyay. And the question is, I do not want to make my point every time and all the time, but for a good listener who's confident about herself, wants a valid and substantial point heard. How do I do that? So thanks, Madhu, for posting this question. So I'm glad that you're saying that you are a good listener. In fact, I say when it comes to creating presence, it's not just about speaking up. It's a very good blend of speaking up and being a good listener as well. So which you're saying that you're already a good listener, and also, like, how do you really make your point heard, and also show that confidence? So confidence, I always say, has multiple parts when you are actually in the meeting. So one way, which I have always believed, is you get that confidence, of course, in terms of a lot is said about your body language itself. Yeah, So if you really understand, it's only 7% of what we speak actually creates that impact. But in terms of showing the confidence, it's a lot with your body language. So it's also important as to when you enter the room, and even in terms of the seating what you take in the room. Many times I've observed that women goes and occupies uh, you know probably a corner seat where you can't really create a presence, and that itself shows that how confident are you and what kind of authority do you want to really exhibit in that meeting. So it's really important to also bring about the right body language. uh, and I'm sure you understand. If you I mean, I would suggest you to also go through the TED talk of Amy Cuddy, which I always advise many women to do that, in terms of how do you really create presence in the room with your body language. How do you exhibit authority, and how do you really exhibit that approachability in the room with your body language. That's one aspect of it. The other aspect which also brings in confidence is, how prepared are you in the meeting room? So very often I've seen, in the corporate world, people just because your meeting calendar, your calendar is blocked, back to back with multiple meetings. But if you've been invited for a meeting and where you want to create an impact and influence, it's extremely important to do some pre-work as part of the meeting. How do you really prepare yourself? How do you really go through that agenda items? And if you really don't know what the agenda item is, there's no harm in actually asking the person who's chairing the meeting in terms of what's the agenda. Once you've gone through that, and also see as to what are those agenda items and where is it that you would really like to share your ideas, and express your views in terms of certain other agenda items, and you want to really create an impact based on the content or the subject knowledge which you bring to the table. So one aspect is, of course, in terms of the body language. The other is in terms of your preparation in the meeting. And the third, I would say, is also in terms of, many times we say, the agenda items, none of it is relevant to me. So what do I do? So I'm just keeping quiet. Yeah. So, but then the question is that if you're there and you've been invited, that means, it doesn't mean that you need to only participate in the relevant agenda items, which probably belongs to your vertical or, your subject. How can you also, it's very I mean, as you keep growing senior, it's important to have a holistic view in terms of all that happens in the organization and in the environment. And probably in meetings you can create that presence by asking very meaningful questions. So asking those powerful questions is also another important aspect which I would advise, which also shows your authority, and probably brings about the influence in the meeting. And the fourth thing is also in terms of the choice of words you use when you speak. Many times, women come and tell me that, I get interrupted and I need to probably, speak loudly, or my ideas get hijacked by others. So there, it's also important of to see as to what are the choice of words you use in terms of when you are speaking. And very often I have also seen women especially tend to use those, show their self doubt, quote unquote, or use those apologetic tone, I would say. When I say apologetic tone, or show that self doubt, it's from the choice of words. It's like, if you don't mind, you use certain phrases like that. Can I share this? So as though you're trying to ask for a permission. So the moment you are there in a meeting and you have some kind of a subject matter expertise, and that's where you are having a seat at the table, it's important to show that authority even by using the right choice of word. So to summarize, Madhus, it's a combination of body language, the preparation which you do in the pre-meeting, the choice of words, not being apologetic at all, and all that put together. You can actually, you'll find that over a period of time that you are exhibiting your confidence, And of course, you'll realize that you have been taken more seriously in the meeting, and people start hearing you in terms of when you speak in the meetings. The second question, let me just refresh, is from Ajisha S. Achari. The question is, my low volume of sound is very big problem to conduct an interview. Okay. My English language fluency and lack of confidence are the main cause of my low volume. I need a restart, but I lost something. So, Ajisha, I always say that nobody is perfect. So I'm glad that you're already, putting it across there that there are two things which is also bringing about low confidence in you, because of which you also see that there is an impact in terms of, the tone or the volume with which you are actually speaking. So one you're saying is obviously your English language part of it. The other is the lack of confidence. So I think probably you need to deep dive in terms of the English language, and believe me, these are very easy to overcome. So English language, I'm sure there are enough and more ways in which you can actually get this, where probably you can take a formal coaching or mentoring by which you can get this done, and also the practice. So it's very, very important to do this. When it comes, nobody is, and especially we being Indians, where English is not our native language. I'm sure we all of us have gone through this in some point of time. In terms of having a fluency in this language. So it's not very difficult to overcome this challenge. So what you can do is, from my experience, you can practice speaking more and more. You can listen to more and more of these talks online, offline, and utilize wherever you get the opportunity. Don't shy away from speaking. Probably you can make a first attempt in trying to speak in places where the impact is or the consequences are low. So but you need to come out of that, and it will only happen if you start taking the first step. And moment I'm sure you overcome this challenge of fluency in English, automatically you'll realize that the confidence also of yours gets built. And the other thing which I told you in the last question, if you've been hearing, the confidence part is also a lot to do with your, how do you bring yourself or carry yourself in the room. So especially when you're saying that while you're conducting an interview, your volume is low. So you can also practice this volume aspect, where you can probably lock yourself. I always say lock yourself in the room, and give that training to your voice or the tone as well, where you can actually shout out and probably say a few sentences with those voice modulation, and do that practice. So this is what there are a couple of tips I would give it to you in terms of the fluency part, and also the low volume. And I'm sure if you do that, make the first attempt, automatically the other aspects will fall in place, which is the lack of confidence. The third question is Priyanka. Often I find myself shouting in meetings. Okay, just so I can explain or defend my idea. How do I do this without shouting? Please help. Okay, that's a great question actually, because I've seen very often actually women, many times it's also to do with our voice nature or the tone. We feel that we are not getting heard, number one. Number two, we, even if we speak, we get interrupted a lot, or people just hijack our ideas. So in my view, I mean, at least this is what I have practiced. So obviously shouting does not help. Probably you may draw attention a couple of times by doing this, But then if you continuously do this very often, then it may also not, give a good taste to the people around you. So it's important that, you get the attention of the audience without even shouting. And that, in my view, when you're in a meeting, there should be always a good blend of where you're able to show authority as well as, showing the approachability. And so there are a couple of things which probably you can do in terms of doing this, is in terms of showing the authority, maybe in terms of how do you initiate the discussion, how do you probably even practice what you have in terms of some of the agenda items where you want to express your views. So you can probably go and do that preparation well in advance and come to the meeting. The second is, I would say, in your case, if there is a lot of interruptions, you need to be assertive. And if it happens too often, there's nothing wrong in being assertive about it and saying that, whoever is around, you can say, take out few names. If there are few people who are constantly interrupting you, in that meeting, you can always say, I have a few points to say. Can I complete this? And I have my, my idea, this so and so to express around this agenda item. Can I express my viewpoint? And probably draw that attention to the person who's doing this and who's not listening to you. And probably if you'll realize that if you do this couple of times, automatically, they realize that you mean business and you are serious about what you're saying. So you don't really need to shout, but it's important to draw the attention of the people by also being very, very assertive, and also the choice of words. You don't need to be apologetic. You don't need to say, I'm sorry. You remove all those jargons and the words from your dictionary especially when you want to assert yourself and be heard in the meeting. So coming to the next question, it's from Priyanka Mukund Deshpande. Hi Veena, I want to know how to keep silence at certain times. Great. So as I told initially, when you have to create a presence in the room, it doesn't mean it's only by speaking up. Many times we get that wrong, that if I have to be in a meeting room, it's only I need to talk and talk and talk. We get that, that's completely wrong. So actually you need to have as you keep growing senior, you need to have a very good blend of, where you speak and create presence, and also that listening. And actually, listening is a very, very powerful word. And I always say, when you actually just listen, there's a jumbled word of nothing but the silence. So so it's important to also show that you respect the other person. And listening brings in a lot of things, and you're showing genuinely, and you're being empathetic about the other person's ideas. You've been empathetic about and respectful about what others bring to the table. And there again, it's not just about being quiet. Sometimes we say, silence or listening means it's just being quiet or being silent. It's not that. It's also, it should show in your body language, where, you genuinely show it to the other person that you are listening, probably by nodding your head and probably giving that eye contact when the other person is speaking. So these are certain ways in which, you can actually bring about, show to also the audience that you are genuinely listening to them, and in your words, by keeping silent. And there's nothing wrong in being silent. And in fact, many people say, I'm an introvert, so I don't like to speak a lot. That's absolutely fine. You don't need to change your personality about it. But what is important is, how do you embrace that introvertness also in the meeting? You can always do that, where I'm sure you would have a couple of ideas where you want to make a point. So you can probably, most often probably you can be listening in the meeting, and where you are, gathering all the points by being silent. But ensure that where you need to share your idea, you do speak that couple of powerful sentences. And lastly, you could also probably summarize the whole thing. If you're a leader, if you're an introvert leader, I've seen many introvert leaders in my, career, where they speak very less, but they whatever they speak, they make so much sense, and they do it. They come to and they speak at the time where it creates huge impact. Probably towards the end, where they're just summarizing, all that what they have heard in a very crisp manner, and that speaks volume actually about that you've been genuinely following what's happening in the uh, meeting. Okay, Deepika Jain. Hi Veena, when there are experienced and influential people sitting in a meeting, how to put our point across in a way that is acceptable? That's a great question. Believe me, Deepika, this problem, I have also seen, and challenge being there by many, many, many people. Yeah, in terms of even this very senior folks having this a challenge when they see more experienced and influential people around them, um, they're not able to put their point across. So at least what has helped me is, first and foremost, you need to um, remember that in fact, even before all this, I always say that visualization in such meetings is very, very important, which just happens even before you enter the meeting room. And this is a very big opportunity. Deepika, if you ask me, if you're going to be in a meeting setting where you're going to have senior people, where you want to influence, it's definitely an important opportunity for you to create an impact. So that pre-work, as I said, it's an important aspect. So you need to prepare, and in terms of what you want to say and why you want to and say that in a very, very confident, with a confident voice and tone. And when you are sitting and when you occupy a seat, uh, of course, I'm not saying that a lot of people also feel nervous about even to making the first attempt. And what's helped me is take a deep breath, and of course be mindful of what you speak, uh, and speak with clarity, confidence. Be aware of your tone, the voice, and give that eye contact when you speak. That's a very, very important aspect, especially when you want to create an impact with the influential people. And do that homework in terms of whatever the idea or the subject which you want to convey something. And believe me, uh, very often I have seen when you do that, the experience or the influential people, they like it actually. And many of us, we tend to think that you can also create an impact by just being saying yes to what the experienced or the seniors are saying. uh, you don't need to be a showcase that you're always a yes master there. What people like, in terms of if you want to really create an influence or an impact, is, do you have an independent viewpoint? Do you have an independent idea around, and which is making sense? And so I think all that what I told, it's about the body language, the tone, the choice of words, not being apologetic, all that combined together. It's an extremely important aspect to do that, if you want to really create an impact, and when you are surrounded by senior people. The other question is, I have a fear of public speaking. How do I overcome that? So Chitra, this question is from you. Believe me, again, you're not alone. There's, if you see in the study which has been done in terms of looking at which is the biggest fear, you won't believe, the biggest fear amongst most of us is public speaking, which is even on top of even death. Can you believe it? So you're not alone. So how do you overcome? So for me, the first step, in fact, when I look back in my own journey, believe me, when I had this very similar challenges in terms of public speaking, and the only thing to fight those fears is to overcome that fear, is to start. Because Um, Otherwise, you're never going to. You give this fear is obviously going to continuously remain. I always say if you are in that uncomfortable zone of yours, you have to make it comfortable by embracing it, and start by you know using all that opportunity which comes your way. Make small babies, take small baby steps, use that. And probably if you are in a setting where you're able to do some presentation or do some public speaking or do some talking, in a setting where you're comfortable with that audience, start there. And then over a period of time, you build it on to the opportunities where you can also express to strangers. Make a conscious effort in terms of starting to talk or doing this public speaking even in a newer setting. And maybe approach your friends team and say that I want to talk on so and so topic. In fact, I used to do this in my team back in Philips, so that my entire team comes out of this fear. Is we used to have an agenda in our a team, that every week in our team weekly team meeting, one person actually speaks about any topic of their choice. It could be anything. It could be probably even uh, you know on parenting. You want to just talk about parenting, or it could be on cooking, or it could be on gardening, or whatever is the topic you want, or it could be on one of the topic which is probably one of the general topic which is happening today. um, so it's just to make yourself comfortable in terms of and also making you come out of that fear of public speaking. And this is only going to happen if you start with with baby steps. And You need to take that up wherever you have an opportunity. Just start doing right from today. And believe me, Chitra, over a period of time you'll realize that within a month or so you're already way better off than what you are today. Okay, this question now I see from Divya Raja Ganeshan. Okay. Hi Veena, how do I make sure that my voice is heard in a meeting, but at the same time doesn't intimidate others? So, Divya, it's actually a very good question. So, I always say that it's that choice of words and also the tone. Many times I've seen these women complaining that uh, when they are assertive, they are also perceived. I would say it's because of the typical stereotypes which exist around us. Um, they are seen as aggressive. There's a very thin line between being assertive and aggressive. And a lot of times, probably as we as women, to avoid those interruptions, or making our presence felt, or making an impact, we probably tend to become more assertive. And in that process, I've seen that many probably people around us tend to think that we are intimidating. So you need to always have a good balance, I say. And that's why I say in the meeting, you will find that there are opportunities where you would get that you need to show authoritativeness as a leader. And it's also equally important that you also have to show that you're approachable. And you need to have a good blend of both. So don't always bring that poker face just because you're a leader. And so it's important as to how you carry yourself with your pleasant voice, your tone, your body language, your facial expression, and also the choice of words. So there could be times where you're also making, not just being assertive, but where you need to make your point, but also being approachable. You can do it by possibly pulling the others in the meeting, and and showing that you do care. You do care for what others' point of view is. And I think the one question which came out is by listening or being silent at certain times. It's not that you need to only, a lot of times I've also seen many women leaders where they become intimidating because without even being realizing that, because they tend to, be all over the place while driving the meeting and not realizing, because it's also because of flow of being very passionate about that topic or the subject what you're discussing, and you go with the flow. But you need to always be mindful of what you're doing, because I say those meetings are sometimes an act or a performance as well, and you're being watched. So it's important to carry yourself in a way you are, it's a blend of authoritativeness, which you should not forget, because people should take you seriously, and also showing approachability. And it all happens through body language, your choice of word, the way you carry yourself, eye contact, all of it. The other question is by Sarad Indu. What are the precautions to be taken while we are giving a speech in a meeting room? Some of the don'ts I would say in a meeting room when you're giving a speech or when you have something to drive, you need to be first and foremost plan and prepare well. And if it's that you're going to be having that agenda item where you're going to drive for 10 minutes, make sure you're doing that enough preparation for, that 10 minutes. And some of the time, most of the time, this, we very often, we just, because of our overconfidence in the topic, we tend to ignore that. And we just walk into the meeting room without even being cognizant of the time. That also doesn't give a very good sign. So you need to always show you're in control, especially when you are driving something, because the moment you're underprepared or not cognizant of the time, you show that you're not in control of what you're trying to drive. So it's important to show that you are in control. And what helps, at least what's helped me, is going prepared, and probably sometimes even scripting. Even I do a lot of workshops and I do a lot of public speaking, and I always script in terms of certain and the points which I want to make sure that I don't miss out. I do script and I rehearse, I practice. It's important to do that. And also the other aspect is, before even you, this is all before you come for the meeting, and make sure that you are in the meeting room much ahead of before the meeting starts, so that um, you don't get stressed out. If you're going to make an important thing to drive, you have an important thing to drive, don't get stressed out by just rushing into the meeting room in the last minute, because you need to be relaxed if you're really driving something. So the best way is that you come into the meeting room much when you're well prepared and also well ahead, and you do all that setting, which is more in terms of the technology, whatever you need, the space, what you're going to occupy. That's also important. Many times, we just, because we probably entering late, we just occupy some, a seat or a space where you can't really make an impact, or probably you're not able to give an eye contact to the most important people where you want to make an impact or create an influence. So these are some of the tips I would share with you in terms of when you have to really give a speech or create an impact or drive something in the meeting room. The other don't would be also in terms of, again, this comes back to the preparation, is you need to also visualize some of the questions which is possibly you could get in terms of the topic which you are driving. And what has helped me is also thinking about those questions, and also looking and also visualizing as to how would I respond to it. And that's also has helped me. The another thing which I would say, as you keep growing senior, you'll realize that there are times where you'll find that one or people in your team is always there to only pull you down or interrupt. So especially in a topic where you want to create an impact and have a clear outcome in the meeting, what's helped me is to collaborate. even before you enter the meeting room with some of the key stakeholders in the meeting, of that meeting or the outcome. So even outside the meeting room, collaborate with few people, share your ideas as to what you want to bring to the table in the meeting room, and get their concurrence or get their support as well. And believe me, that's worked so much for me. And so you going prepared and getting their stakeholder support well, and maybe the important stakeholders which matter. And in the meeting room, when you're driving these things, and even one or two sentences, your important stakeholders who support you speak, automatically you'll realize that your what you're driving gets heard and also creates an impact, uh, because they take you seriously, that you've already done the homework and you've already influenced the most important people in the room. Okay, a good question. Hi, Veena. Will it help to ask a few occasional questions to others in a meeting to make sure that they are in the same page as yours? Would it be considered rude? Not at all, Divya. It's a fantastic thing to actually ask questions, which I think I mentioned earlier also in my conversation here. Um, so many times probably you are entering a meeting where you don't have anything to, drive in the agenda items. So to make your presence felt, ask those meaningful questions. But when you ask questions, make it meaningful and where it creates an impact, and connect the dots in terms of the conversation which is going on in the meeting. It's a very, very important skill to have. And that only happens, you can only connect the dots if it can only happen if you are fully present in the meeting by listening. Because many times I've seen people ask very tangential question which is not even related to the topics being discussed. So it's important to ask relevant questions and powerful questions, and it definitely is not considered rude. But again, it's the choice of words. I always say it's a choice of words, and in terms of the way you ask the question. And you can also pull some of your colleagues who do not whom you know has have a lot of ideas, and but they do not speak in the meeting. You can pull them up also by saying their name, and saying, do you have anything to share? I haven't in this particular topic. And you could do that as well. So asking questions is definitely not rude. In fact, I would say, I always encourage people that you need to ask questions, but make sure that you ask meaningful and sensible questions, which is connecting the dot to the conversation which is happening. And also don't ask questions which probably derails a meeting, or it could completely take the meeting in a tangential way. So very often I've also seen some people ask questions just to get that brownie point from their seniors or the bosses, because they think that to show their presence, and then they just ask questions and then just keep quiet. But that's not what I would encourage. Ask meaningful questions by connecting the dots, and that also shows that you're listening and you're empathetic about all those conversations which are happening in the room. That's a very fantastic question. Hi, Veena. How to make sure your opinions matter and what you're trying to convey makes sense when other people may not agree completely with you? Okay. So there are two things which has worked for me, I think, which I've already told in this conversation. One, of course, is doing preparation in terms of, whatever ideas you want to bring to the table. Do that homework, do that preparation, and bring in those key things which will make sense. Um, and be assertive when you say those things by not using apologetic tone, but by being really assertive, by using the right choice of words. Number one. Number two is, see, you will realize that in the meeting, there are always there will be difference of opinion in terms of your points or certain points. And my view on this would be not to get emotional about it. You know, always a difference of opinion is welcome, and it's not, when you're entering or you're putting a point of view, is not about, that people all need to listen to my point, and that's where I've won. That's not the intent, right? The intent is how. So the meeting, when you are discussing a particular topic, how do you make that outcome better by bringing in ideas from various people? So if there can be a chance, where you are bringing in your idea, and this is probably a better idea from somebody else, it's okay. And, listen to that as well. And probably, you know, uh, collaborate in terms of, you know, and have a joint discussion in terms of, and get a better outcome in terms of those points. So in my view, it's always okay to have others views as well, and it's not that you need to always push only your point. And it's also important to listen to others point of view. So I think with that, we are, in my view, with the end of the questions here. It was really pleasure talking to you all, uh, and very interesting questions. And believe me, all that what you have asked is, you're not alone. We've all gone through this. Even I personally have gone through all of that what you're asking. Um, and it's just the question of making an attempt. Um as I said, doing enough preparation, the body language, the choice of words, being assertive, and making sure that you use every opportunity you get in terms of this meeting as an opportunity where you want to create an impact and an influence. And you'll go a long way if you start this. Um and it helps, especially when in terms of the growth, and everything falls in place in terms of the confidence. If you have lack of confidence, or you are being interrupted, or you're not being taken seriously, all that will fall in place. And but at the end of the day, it all has to start, and I think you need to make a start and use all those techniques or the tips which I have said. So these are some of the experience, and and the tips which has worked for me, I have shared. Feel free to reach out to me if you have some more questions around this topic or anything else. You can reach out to me at Veena at the rate of inroads.co.in, or you can also reach out to me in my personal number, which is 98450 Thank you so much. If you have any further questions, put in your questions here. Um, I will come back to this chat and respond to your questions. Thank you so much. Bye.